It begins with the sound before you see anything. The muted percussion of rain on leaves, on stone, on the fabric of your coat, each drop a patient tap upon the quiet of the evening. The world around you is blurred by mist, the edges of trees softening into gray silhouettes, the ribbon of the road winding ahead like a thread, leading you somewhere half-remembered. You have been walking for what feels like hours, though time seems to have dissolved in the steady rhythm of your steps. The wet earth pressing softly beneath your boots, the air cool enough to make each breath feel like a small cloud within your chest. Somewhere in the distance, hidden in the folds of fog, you think you can hear a low, steady hum, almost like a voice that is not speaking words, but instead inviting you onward. The road is narrow here, hemmed in by hedges grown wild and old, their branches weaving together into a loose arch overhead, letting the rain drip through in slow silver threads. Each droplet catches the dim light from the fading sky, glimmering for an instant before sinking into the sodden ground. Your hands are tucked deep into your pockets, the fabric there still holding the faint warmth of your body, while your shoulders carry the weight of dampness that feels both tiring and strangely comforting. The scent of wet leaves clings to everything, rich and earthy, with the faint sweetness of distant wood smoke curling through the air. Though you see no houses, no firelight, no sign of any other traveler on this lonely stretch of road, there is a moment when the wind shifts and you catch it, a glow ahead, muted but steady, cutting softly through the haze. It is not the cold blue-white of lightning, nor the wavering spark of a lone lantern on the roadside, but something warmer, thicker, like honey poured into the darkness. You slow your pace without meaning to, as though the glow is a living thing, and you do not wish to frighten it away. The rain patters more softly now, though perhaps that is only because the air feels denser here, each breath full of the smell of wood and stone and something faintly spiced, like cloves. You realize that your heart is beating a little faster, not with urgency, but with the quiet anticipation of someone about to step out of the weather and into shelter. When the road curves, you see it clearly at last, the inn, standing a little apart from the trees, its roof dark with rain, its windows bright and steady in the gathering night. The building seems older than the road itself, its stones irregular, its timbers weathered and patient, as though it has stood for centuries and learned not to rush. A sign swings gently above the door, its paint worn, but still showing the image of a lantern in bloom. A lantern whose flame is shaped like a small, open flower. You find yourself smiling at the sight without knowing why. In the lamplight pooling just beyond the doorway, the rain becomes almost beautiful, each drop turning to gold as it falls. You step closer, the gravel of the path crunching beneath your boots, the soft light brushing your face with a warmth that feels out of place in such cool air. The inn does not bustle or call out to you. It simply waits, as if it has always known you would come. The windows are latticed, the glass slightly uneven, so that the glow within wavers gently, like candlelight seen through water. You can make out the shapes of chairs, the curve of a wooden beam, the faint flicker of movement that might be a fire. Somewhere, just beyond your hearing, there is the low murmur of voices, the clink of a cup set upon a table. The sound seeps through the walls, not in sharp notes, but in softened tones, as though the building itself has learned to muffle the world's harder edges. When you place your hand on the iron latch of the door, it is warm despite the rain, and your fingers linger there for a moment longer than necessary. You can smell the wood of the door, deep and resinous, with that faint metallic temps of the iron beneath your touch. It is the kind of door that seems to have a memory of every hand that has ever turned it, every knock that has ever been given, every departure and return. And though you know you have never been here before, a part of you feels as though you have, in a dream, perhaps, or a story told to you long ago on a winter night when you were half asleep. The rain softens to a whisper behind you, the wind shifting again as if reluctant to follow you inside. You stand there for a breath, taking in the faint golden halo cast by the lantern above the threshold. The way it makes the wet stone glisten, the way the air smells richer now, carrying with it the faintest hint of something baking. In that quiet pause before you enter, you realize you have not seen a single person along the road for hours, perhaps for longer, and the thought should make you uneasy. But it doesn't. Instead, it feels like the world beyond this door has been holding its breath, waiting for you to step into a place where time moves differently, where rain does not matter and the night outside cannot reach. And so, with the gentlest pressure, you lift the latch, feeling the weight of the door give way beneath your hands, the warmth spilling out to meet you like an embrace. The sound of the rain becomes distant, a soft curtain drawn behind you, and for a moment, you stand between two worlds, the damp, misted road fading into the dark, and the golden stillness of the inn, breathing quietly as though alive. You do not yet know that the road you have taken will never lead you back in quite the same way, nor that those who enter this place often do not leave it at all. For now, all you feel is the relief of shelter, the comfort of lamplight, and the steady, unhurried welcome of a door that seems to have been waiting for you since the rain first began to fall. The first thing you notice, once you step fully inside, is the way the air seems to wrap around you like something tangible, warmer than you expected, yet not oppressive, carrying the scent of burning wood, dried herbs, and the faint sweetness of something that reminds you of oranges. The light is softer here than it seemed from the road, not a single blinding glow, but a patient layering of golden pools cast by wall-mounted lanterns, their glass panes warped and old, so that the light ripples gently across the wooden walls like sunlight through water. The floor beneath your boots yields slightly, the timbers carrying a muted echo of your steps, though the sound seems to vanish before it can carry too far. Somewhere nearby, you hear the faint rustle of cloth and the quiet thump of a door closing, as though someone has just stepped out of sight. The door behind you shuts with a careful, deliberate weight, as though it is accustomed to closing itself, the latch settling into place without a sound. For a moment, you turn back to look at it, and in doing so, you have the strange sense that it is looking back at you. It is only a door, a sturdy piece of oak, its surface worn smooth by years of touch. Yet you feel the peculiar awareness of something that knows more than it shows. The grain in the wood runs in long, flowing lines, almost like the contours of a face that has been weathered into calm over centuries. The brass handle, warm beneath your fingertips, seems to mold itself subtly to your hand, as if it has been shaped by every person who has stood where you stand now. And when you release it, you can almost imagine it whispering your name, not aloud, not in any way that could be heard, but in the way the air changes for just a second, as if acknowledging you. You stand in what appears to be a small entry hall, though the dimensions feel uncertain, as though the walls might be closer or farther away depending on how you breathe. To your left, a row of hooks holds coats and cloaks of every kind, some faded and threadbare, others crisp and well-kept, as if left there only moments ago. None of them drip with rain, though you know the weather outside has been unrelenting. A narrow bench sits just below them, polished smooth by countless travelers, and you have the odd impression that if you were to sit, the bench might remember your weight, holding the shape of you for far longer than it should. It is then that you see the innkeeper for the first time. They are not standing in any grand position of welcome, not framed dramatically in a doorway, but simply leaning slightly on the counter of a small reception desk, as though they have been there for some time, quietly waiting for you to notice them. Their face is difficult to place, neither young nor old, not distinctly belonging to any single time or place, and their eyes hold the calm depth of someone who has seen every kind of arrival. When they smile, it is not a broad, hurried thing, but a slow, measured curve, as though they are greeting a memory rather than a stranger. Welcome, they say, and though the word is simple, it carries the weight of familiarity. Their voice has the texture of worn linen, soft and clean, with the faintest trace of something that might be an accent, but which shifts too subtly to name. You realize, with a quiet shiver, that they have not asked who you are. Instead, they speak to you as though they already know, their gaze holding yours in a way that is neither intrusive nor dismissive, but simply present. You give your name anyway, out of habit, and they nod as though it was precisely what they expected to hear. The innkeeper steps out from behind the counter, moving with an ease that makes no sound at all on the wooden floor. They pass you as if to lead the way, but not before pausing briefly by the door, laying one hand against it in a gesture so subtle you might think it accidental. The wood beneath their palms seems to darken slightly, as if absorbing the touch. You find yourself glancing at the door again, certain now that it is not merely a piece of furniture, but something more, a quiet sentinel, perhaps, or a keeper of thresholds. You follow the innkeeper through a short passage lined with framed sketches. The images faded, but still just clear enough to see scenes of fields, forests, and unfamiliar streets. The frames are not uniform, as though each picture had been added at a different time, collected from different hands. At the far end of the passage, another door stands ajar, and from within drifts the low hum of conversation and the richer scent of the hearth. Yet you hesitate for a moment, glancing back, toward the front, toward the oak that closed itself behind you, feeling a pull as though it were a living thing that might remember you in your absence. The innkeeper turns slightly, catching your pause without remarking on it, their expression unreadable but patient. It will keep, they say, and though they mean the door, you hear something deeper in the words, a suggestion that whatever you have stepped into is in no hurry, that it has been here before you and will be here after, holding its quiet watch. You allow yourself to be guided away, yet even as you move on, the warmth of the latch lingers faintly in your palm, a heat that feels less like metal and more like skin. By the time you reach the main room, the presence of the door has already begun to recede from your thoughts, becoming part of the stillness that wraps around you. But somewhere, under the layered scents of wood smoke and spiced tea, you think you can smell the rain again, not the wetness of your coat or boots, but the memory of it, as though the door still carries the outside world against its grain, keeping it safe for you until you decide to leave. and you do not yet realize that it will remember your name long after you have forgotten this night entirely. The stairs that lead you upward are narrow, though not in a way that feels confining. Their steps worn in the center to the softness of a river stone by countless feet that have ascended before yours. The banister is smooth beneath your hand, the wood still holding the faint warmth of the day, and the lanterns, fixed to the walls, throw a gentle amber light across each riser, making the shadows between them deepen like small pools of ink. The innkeeper moves ahead of you with the slow assurance of someone who has climbed these stairs thousands of times and never lost their footing, their quiet presence both guiding and unhurried, allowing you to take in the subtle creak of the boards, the smell of beeswax polish, and the muffled crackle of a hearth somewhere below. At the top, the hallway stretches in both directions, though the lamplight only reaches so far before dissolving into a dimness that seems less like shadow and more like distance made from air. You follow the innkeeper along a short stretch where the floor dips slightly under your weight, as if acknowledging each step. The doors you pass are all closed, each with a number carved into the wood in the old style, the grooves darkened from years of touch. Some doors are flanked by narrow tables, with vases holding small sprays of dried flowers, their colors faded but still clinging to a memory of themselves. You notice that none of the flowers have dust on them, and you wonder how such stillness can be so carefully maintained. Your room is at the very end of this stretch, tucked away as if it had been waiting to be revealed until just now. The innkeeper opens it for you, stepping aside so you may enter first, and you cross the threshold into a space that feels both smaller and larger than you expected, small in its closeness, in the low slope of the ceiling and the thick beams overhead, yet large in the way the air seems to hold more than the room contains. The light comes from a single oil lamp on the bedside table, its glow soft enough to make the corners dissolve into a kind of dusk. It is then, as you move further inside, that you feel it, the faint but certain tilt of the floor beneath your feet. At first, it is so subtle you think it might be the lingering sway of your own body after walking in the rain. But no, it is the boards themselves, slanting gently toward the far wall, as if the whole room is leaning into some unseen listening. The sensation is not disorienting. Rather, it draws your awareness to the way you move, to the slight shift of your balance as you cross toward the window. The air in the room carries the cool dampness of the rain outside, though softened by the faint scent of lavender that seems to rise from the bedding. You place your hand on the wall for a moment, feeling the unevenness of the plaster, the small ridges that catch at your fingertips like the memory of an old brushstroke. When you turn toward the bed, you notice that the headboard sits slightly higher on one side than the other, a small adjustment made to counter the floor's angle, as if whoever prepared the room knew exactly how it leaned. The wardrobe in the corner has been built to match the slope, its base wider on one side, so that from certain angles it appears to be leaning back, listening along with the room to whatever it is the walls keep within them. The innkeeper sets your small case at the foot of the bed, their movement precise and unhurried, and asks if the room will do. You nod, for there is nothing here that feels lacking. The bedding is thick and clean, the air is gentle, the light is kind, and yet you cannot help but glance down at your feet, feeling again the tilt, wondering whether the rest of the inn stands straight, or if every floor has its own secret angle. The innkeeper notices your glance, but says nothing, offering instead a soft good night before stepping back into the hall. The door closes with the same patient weight as the front door had, and you are left in the quiet company of your slanted refuge. You sit on the edge of the bed for a while, listening to the subtle sounds that live in the wood, the low sigh of the beams, the faint shuffle that might be the wind shifting outside, or might be something moving far below. The lamp's light catches the brass knob of the wardrobe, making it gleam in a way that draws your eye again and again, until you realize it is reflecting something not quite within its line of sight. You move closer, but the angle of the floor shifts the reflection away, and the image disappears into the small imperfections of the metal. Later, when you lie down, you feel the tilt in a different way, your head slightly higher than your feet, the weight of your body settling toward one side. It makes the blanket fall in a slow diagonal across you, the folds gathering more heavily at your legs. The pillow holds your head at just the right incline, though, as if it has been chosen for this very purpose. You close your eyes and let the sensation carry you, imagining that you are not in a fixed place at all, but drifting gently toward the far wall, toward some unseen shore where the inn might anchor itself against the pull of whatever currents move unseen beneath it. The sound of rain has softened to a delicate tapping on the window, almost as if it is coming from inside the glass rather than from without. You breathe in the mingled scents of lavender, wood, and distant smoke, and you think, just before sleep begins to unspool you, that perhaps the floor is not tilted because of time or wear, but because the entire room has been leaning toward something it wishes to hear for a very long while. And though you do not yet know what that something is, you feel, in the last moments before you drift away, that it is not entirely a secret meant to be kept from you forever. You find your way back down the narrow staircase, with the care of someone walking through a place that might remember each step. The wooden banisters smooth beneath your palm, the light from the hallway lanterns spilling softly over the edges of the stairs like slow-moving water. The air carries with it freshly baked bread and the faint, sweet weight of something simmering for hours until the flavors have become inseparable from the air itself. You move toward the source without needing to ask, drawn by the invisible thread of scent and the murmur of voices. The dining room is not grand, and yet it feels as though it has been arranged to receive travelers from many kinds of roads. The ceiling beams are low, heavy with age, their surfaces burnished smooth by 100 years of lamplight. The walls are paneled in dark wood that glows faintly in the firelight from a large hearth at one end of the room. The flames, they're moving with the slow confidence of a fire that knows it will be tended long into the night. A scattering of tables, each with a single candle, fills the room, the flames flickering against the glass of the windows so that, for a moment, the outside world appears to be made entirely of shifting gold. You are led to a small table in the corner, the wood worn to a soft sheen by many elbows, the candlelight trembling gently as you take your seat. The chair beneath you fits your shape in a way that feels almost personal, as if it remembers the weight of your body from a time before this one. The innkeeper appears at your side without the sound of approaching steps, placing before you a simple plate and cup, the contents still steaming. You thank them, and they incline their head in a gesture that feels both formal and familiar, as though you have been part of this exchange many times before. The bread is warm in your hands, its crust crisp yet yielding. the inside soft enough to release a faint sigh of steam when you break it apart. The soup, though the word feels too plain, is rich and fragrant, carrying the green brightness of herbs and the grounding depth of root vegetables, its surface catching the light in slow, languid ripples. You take a sip, and the heat blooms across your tongue, curling down into your chest with a comforting weight. It is not merely nourishing. It feels like something remembered, something that has been waiting to return to you. You pause to let the steam curl into your face, and it is then you notice something peculiar. The soup, though you have set it down for some time, has not cooled. The surface still shimmers faintly, as if the bowl is being warmed from within. You take another bite of bread, then another spoonful, and still it is the same, each taste as warm as the first, each breath carrying the same fragrant cloud. You tell yourself it is only the depth of the bowl, the heat lingering because of the pottery. And yet a small part of you feels that the warmth might last for hours, as if it is being tended not by the fire, but by something unseen. Around you, other guests eat in quiet harmony, the clink of spoons and the low murmur of conversation blending into the soft crackle of the hearth. You catch fragments of words without meaning, the sound of voices without the sharpness of language. And it feels like the way one hears talking through a dream, distinct yet impossible to recall once you try to grasp it. A man 2 tables away lifts his cup and smiles at you, a slow, deliberate gesture that holds no urgency. You return the smile, though you cannot say why you feel certain you have met his gaze before, somewhere far from here. The innkeeper passes through the room from time to time, their presence like a change in the air rather than a movement. They refill cups without being asked, adjust the candles so that the light stays steady, and seem to know precisely when each guest is ready for something more. When they reach your table, they replace your bread with another piece, warm as though it had just come from the oven, though you have seen no one enter or leave the kitchen. You eat slowly, partly because the food demands to be savored, and partly because there is a sense that nothing here will hurry you. As you sit there, the hour passes without you noticing, the edges of time dissolving in the steady comfort of the meal. The warmth in your hands never fades, and even the candle before you seems reluctant to burn lower, its flame holding steady as if suspended in the same patient moment. When at last you set down your spoon, the bowl is still warm, still fragrant, as though the food has been waiting for you all along, and will continue to do so until you are ready to finish. You lean back in your chair, letting the quiet of the room settle over you, and you realize that you have not heard the sound of rain since you entered, though you are certain it must still be falling beyond the windows. The glass reflects only the light from the hearth, as if the night outside has been gently folded away. You wonder, briefly, if you might return to your room and find it exactly as you left it, the bed still holding the warmth of your body from before, the tilt of the floor unchanged, the air still carrying the faint scent of lavender. When you finally rise, the innkeeper is there again. Not to rush you, but simply to stand nearby, their eyes holding that same calm recognition. You thank them, though you are not certain if you mean for the meal or for something larger, the warmth, the stillness, the way the world beyond these walls has become so distant it feels like another life. They incline their head once more, and you walk back toward the hallway, the taste of herbs and bread still lingering, the bowl behind you perhaps still steaming, as though supper in this place is never meant to cool at all. The fire in the hearth is the kind that seems to have been burning for a very long time, not in the way of a blaze freshly lit, but with the deep, steady glow of embers that have been quietly tended through countless nights. The flames lean and sway in slow rhythms, casting amber light that ripples across the room in soft, warm waves. You feel its heat before you draw close, not sharp, but round and encompassing, the kind that settles into your skin and works its way gently to your bones. The chairs nearest the fire are arranged with a kind of casual symmetry, as if they have been moved and returned many times, their positions chosen more by instinct than by design. It is when you settle into one of these chairs that you notice the portrait hanging just above the mantel, framed in dark, ornate wood, its corners carved into curling leaves that seem almost alive in the flickering light. At first, you take in the image without much thought, a figure seated in a high-backed chair, their hands folded in their lap, their posture calm, their clothing simple but carefully rendered. The paint is old enough that the colors have softened into an almost dreamlike palette. The reds and browns deepened, the whites warmed to the hue of parchment. The figure's face is composed, neither smiling nor frowning, the expression belonging to someone who knows more than they will ever say. You might have left it at that, letting your gaze drift back to the fire, if it weren't for the sensation, subtle at first, that the eyes in the portrait are not fixed upon the room at large, but upon you, not in the sharp, accusing way of certain paintings, but in a steady, unblinking regard that seems to meet you wherever you shift. You glance away, pretending to study the carved wood of the mantel, but when your eyes return, the feeling is stronger. It is not a trick of light. The gaze is direct, unwavering, as though the figure recognizes you in some quiet, patient way. The longer you look, the more details seem to emerge. The faint crease at the corner of the mouth, the way the hands, though still, appear ready to move, the smallest hint of light in the eyes that no brushstroke could fully explain. The air near the hearth feels warmer now, though you cannot tell if it is from the fire or from something else entirely. Behind you, a few of the other guests converse in low voices, their words indistinct, blending into the crackle of the logs. The innkeeper passes through the room at one point, adjusting a chair, refilling a glass, but they do not look toward the portrait. It is an odd thing, you think, for such a piece to hang so prominently without drawing mention. You wonder who the person was, perhaps a founder of the inn, or a beloved guest, or someone whose memory the place refuses to relinquish. There is no plaque, no nameplate, no date to anchor the image in time. The figure could belong to a century past, or to the present moment, stepping down from the frame to sit by the fire if they wished. And yet, for all this uncertainty, you feel no unease. Instead, there is a peculiar comfort in their attention, as if they are here not to guard, but to witness. The fire shifts, sending a brief flare of light across the room, and for the briefest instant you think you see a change in the portrait. The head turned just slightly more toward you, the angle of the gaze altered by the barest degree. You blink, and the image is as it was before, serene and still, the eyes once again holding yours without force. A guest nearby stirs their tea, the spoon's soft clink drawing you back into the gentle sounds of the room. And the moment slips into something you might almost convince yourself you imagined, but the sense of presence remains. You find yourself leaning back in the chair, the heat of the fire on your legs, the weight of the portrait's gaze like the warmth of a blanket, draped over your shoulders. There is a steadiness in it, a wordless reassurance, though you cannot name its source. You think, fleetingly, that perhaps every guest who sits here feels it, that the eyes in the painting have met thousands of travelers and will continue to do so long after you are gone. When at last you rise to leave, the air cools slightly against your back, and you pause with one hand resting on the carved arm of the chair. You glance up one final time, and in that instant the firelight catches the painted eyes just so, igniting a glint that makes them seem truly alive. You hold the gaze for a moment longer, not in challenge, but in quiet acknowledgement, and then you turn toward the hallway. As you step away, you realize that you did not once think to look for a shadow beneath the chair in the painting. And later, when you return to your room, the warmth from the hearth still lingering in your skin, you will wonder whether the eyes in the portrait are still following you. Not out of the room, but through the inn itself, watching as you pass along the slanted floor, as you close your door, as you slip into the lavender-scented quiet of the night. The desk in the corner of the entrance hall is one of those pieces of furniture that feels older than the building itself. The wood darkened, not by stain, but by years of oil from countless hands resting upon it. It is a heavy thing, sturdy and still, its surface slightly uneven where the grain rises and dips like the quiet swells of a tide. A single brass lamp stands upon it, its shade tilted just enough to pool a golden light over the open book that lies at the center. Pages wide and inviting, the pen set neatly across the seam as if awaiting the next arrival. You notice it when you first pass by, but it draws you back later in the evening, when the murmur of the common room has softened to little more than the clink of glass and the low hum of voices. The guest book's leather cover is worn smooth in places, cracked in others, carrying the faint scent of dust and ink that always seems to linger in the air around old paper. When you place your fingertips upon it, the surface is cool at first, but quickly warms beneath your touch, as if the book remembers the hands that have touched it before. The pages are thick, their edges feathered and soft, the paper holding the slightest texture beneath your fingers. The ink varies from entry to entry, some bold and dark, others faded to the color of dried tea. Yet all the writing is careful, as though every guest who has stayed here felt compelled to present their name with a certain dignity. You begin to notice something curious. The handwriting alternates, not from person to person, but within the same entry. A guest will write their name in a steady, elegant script, only for the date beside it to appear in a different style entirely, sharper and narrower, as if written by another hand. Sometimes the change is subtle, the letters leaning just a little differently. Other times it is more pronounced, the ink pressed more deeply into the fibers, as though the writer's mood had shifted entirely in the space of a breath. Yet the pattern is always the same. Name in one hand, date in another. Your eyes move slowly down the columns of names, some familiar in their simplicity, others elaborate and curling like vines. The dates march on without gap, stretching back far beyond what you would expect for a single ledger. You trace them with your gaze, following the ink into decades long past, until the years no longer feel like markers of time you can easily comprehend. The older the entries grow, the more the ink softens, as though the paper itself has begun to drink it away, leaving only the ghost of the letters. Yet even then, the distinction between the two hands remains, the duality preserved as carefully as the book itself. The longer you linger, the more it feels as though the second hand, the one that writes the dates, does not belong to any guest at all. You begin to imagine someone, perhaps the innkeeper or someone before them, sitting at this desk night after night, waiting for each new arrival to set down their name before adding the date themselves in that unwavering style. But if that were the case, why is the ink the same age in both halves? Why do they seem to have aged together, as though they were born in the same moment? From somewhere down the hallway comes the sound of a door closing gently, followed by the faint creak of a floorboard. The lamp's light pools softly over the page, and you have the strange sense that you are being watched, not by anyone in the room, but by the names themselves, their inked shapes holding fragments of those who wrote them. You imagine the book as a kind of gathering place, its pages the true heart of the inn, where every guest remains even after they are gone. You picture the conversations that might still echo here, the laughter and quiet sighs caught between the lines, as though the paper could keep them safe. On impulse, you take up the pen. The nib is fine, its weight balanced, the wood cool in your grip. The ink flows easily, dark and fluid, as you set your name to the page. The act feels ceremonial, your hand steady, even though your mind is not entirely sure why you feel compelled to write at all. You pause, leaving the space where the date should go. And as you lift the pen from the paper, you have the uncanny feeling that this moment is no longer entirely yours. You close the book gently, the leather making the faintest sigh as it folds shut. The brass lamp's glow remains warm on your hands, and as you step away, you glance back once more. For just a moment, you think you see the cover shift, as if a weight inside it has changed position. But the desk is as it was, the book resting quietly, ready for the next hand to turn its pages. Later, as you make your way up the staircase, you realize you never did look closely at the final entry before yours. And you wonder, though you know you will not return to check, whether your date has already been written. It is near midnight when you find yourself wandering down a corridor you have not walked before. Its narrowness exaggerated by the way the ceiling dips low, as if the beams have been pressing downward for years under the slow, invisible weight of time. The air here is different, cooler, with a faint scent of old plaster and the dry sweetness of wood that has not been disturbed in decades. The floorboards beneath your feet creak less than they should, their sounds softened into a kind of sighing that feels almost respectful, as though the inn itself is aware of the hour and does not wish to wake those sleeping behind the doors you pass. It is at the far end of this passage that you see it, a single window set into the wall, taller than it is wide, framed by heavy curtains of pale, dusty velvet that seem untouched for years. The glass catches the faint amber light from a sconce on the wall, reflecting it back in a muted shimmer that draws you closer. You half expect to see the darkened outline of the street beyond, perhaps the wavering glow of lanterns, or the faint silhouettes of rooftops against the sky. Yet, when you step to the window and look through, you find that there is nothing there at all. Not darkness, not light, not even the suggestion of distance. Only a soft, unbroken gray, like the inside of a cloud that has lost the memory of the sun. Your eyes try to adjust, searching for shapes, for contrast, for the smallest edge of something familiar, but there is none. It is neither comforting nor frightening, only strangely still, as though you are gazing into a place where nothing has yet been decided. You notice how the glass itself feels faintly warm beneath your fingertips, as though whatever lies beyond is not the chill night you imagined, but something with its own quiet, steady heat. You lean closer, the faint fog of your breath smudging the pane. In that haze, for just the briefest moment, you think you see movement, a soft ripple in the gray, like fabric stirred by a breeze, but it fades too quickly to be certain. The velvet curtains stir slightly at your side, though no draft moves through the hall. The sconce light wavers, dimming and brightening again, and you are struck by the sense that the gray beyond the window has shifted its attention toward you, not in a menacing way, but in the way a listening silence can suddenly feel aware. There is a small wooden ledge beneath the window, its surface smooth from the brushing of countless hands or the resting of elbows over years you cannot name. The wood smells faintly of lavender and something older, something you cannot quite place, like the scent of a cedar chest opened after many seasons. You imagine the people who might have stood here before, perhaps on sleepless nights such as this, gazing into that same unbroken gray and wondering if it was they who were watching or they who were being watched. You linger there longer than you intend, time losing its usual boundaries. There is no moonlight to measure, no change in shadow, no sound beyond the slow and steady rhythm of your own breathing. The glass seems almost to hum beneath your fingertips, not in a way you can hear, but in a way you can feel, like the faint vibration of a distant bell. It is subtle, nearly imperceptible, but once noticed, it cannot be ignored. You imagine that if you stood here long enough, the hum might deepen, becoming something like a voice, though whether it would speak in words or something older than words, you cannot say. At last, you step back. The moment you move away, the air in the corridor seems to change. The faint scent of lavender dissipates, the curtains fall still, and the sconce's light steadies once more. You glance back over your shoulder before you turn away, and for the briefest instant, you think you see your own reflection in the glass, not quite matching your movement. But the gray remains unbroken, as calm and unreadable as before. As you walk back down the corridor, you notice how the air warms again, how the floorboards resume their softer creaks, how the world seems to settle around you as though nothing unusual has occurred. And yet, even as you return to the more familiar halls of the inn, you carry with you the quiet, endless space you saw through that window, a space with no horizon, no depth, and no end, waiting patiently for you should you ever wish to look again. It is by chance, or perhaps by the kind of quiet guidance that the inn seems to give without ever speaking, that you find the door. It is set at the end of a short side hall you have never noticed before, a hall so narrow it feels almost shy, its walls painted the pale color of early morning clouds. The wooden door is neither grand nor particularly old, yet something about it draws you, perhaps the faint glimmer of light slipping out from the thin gap beneath, or the way the brass handle looks faintly worn in the shape of countless hands. You do not remember ever seeing another guest enter or leave this room, yet it feels familiar, as if you have passed it many times in a dream. When you open it, the first thing you notice is the scent. It is the unmistakable fragrance of rain, not the clean, sharp smell of a passing shower, but the deep, almost sweet scent of long, gentle rain falling on warm earth. It carries with it the coolness of wet stone, the green whisper of leaves heavy with water, and the faint, metallic taste of air just before a storm breaks. The strangeness is not in the smell itself, but in the fact that you can feel, without a doubt, that it is the middle of winter outside. The windows should be rimmed with frost, the air brittle with cold, and yet here the room holds the mild, damp warmth of a garden after a summer downpour. You step inside, and the floor beneath your feet gives softly, as though the boards themselves have absorbed years of moisture. The light in the room is dim but golden, coming from a single oil lamp resting on a low wooden table near the bed. It glows through a shade of pale parchment, turning the walls a muted honey color. The bed is unmade, its quilt rumpled and faintly dimpled, as though someone has just risen from it moments before. On the quilt lies a small folded handkerchief, its fabric still damp in one corner, carrying that same delicate, rain-washed scent. Your eyes drift toward the window, and you see that the glass is clouded over, but not with frost, with the blurred sheen of condensation, tiny droplets forming and sliding down in slow, shimmering paths. Beyond it, you expect to see the inn's familiar courtyard or the neighboring rooftops, yet instead you glimpse only the wavering outlines of trees swaying in an unseen wind. Their leaves glisten as though heavy with rain, though you cannot hear the sound of it falling. A pale mist curls low across the ground, soft and constant, and in that drifting whiteness there is a stillness that feels almost tender. You approach the window, resting your hand on the sill, which feels faintly damp and cool against your skin. The air here seems to hold the same gentle humidity as a summer evening, and with it comes a subtle, persistent warmth, not enough to be stifling, but enough to make you feel that you could stand here forever without the need for a coat. Somewhere in the quiet, you think you hear the faint patter of droplets, but it is so distant and muffled, it feels less like a sound in the air and more like an echo inside your chest. Turning back toward the bed, you notice something you had missed before. In the corner of the room, near the wardrobe, there is a narrow chair on which rests a pair of shoes. They are dark leather, polished yet faintly worn, with traces of dried mud still clinging to their soles. The earth is pale and fine, unlike any you have seen in the village outside. You find yourself wondering whose shoes they were, and whether the one who wore them stepped into this room from a place where the rain was falling and then simply never stepped out again. The lamp flickers softly, and for a moment you think you catch the faint shimmer of water on the wooden boards near the door, as though someone had entered dripping wet and left without bothering to dry the floor. But when you blink, the boards are dry again, the wood dark only with its natural grain. The scent of rain deepens, richer now, and with it comes an inexplicable sense of rest, the way one feels when the world outside is dim and hushed, and there is no reason to move from where you are. You linger there longer than you intended, your thoughts slowing in the warm, damp air. The handkerchief remains on the quilt, its dampness never quite drying, the faint imprint of its fold untouched. Outside the window, the mist drifts endlessly among the trees, the air thick with the promise of a rain that never seems to arrive. You feel as though if you closed your eyes here, you would wake not in the same room, but in the place beyond the mist, walking through a forest of glistening leaves, your footsteps soundless on the softened earth. When at last you leave, the scent of rain clings to you like a memory. In the hallway beyond, the air is dry and faintly scented with the inn's usual mixture of wood smoke and candle wax. But in your mind you still carry the heaviness of summer air after a storm. And though you know it is deep winter outside, you cannot help but feel that somewhere, just beyond the reach of your sight, the rain is still falling, and someone is still waiting in that quiet room for a guest who will never leave again. You find it quite by accident, wandering through the inn at an hour when most lights have gone out, save for the gentle glow of wall lamps and the faint golden spill from beneath a few closed doors. The corridors are hushed, their carpets soft beneath your feet, and you walk without aim, letting your hand trail along the cool wood of the wainscot. That is when you see it, a doorway at the end of a short, slanted hall, wider than most, its frame darkened with age and polished to a quiet sheen by decades of passing hands. Beyond it lies a room you have never noticed before, though you are certain you have passed this way. It is a small chamber. Yet the moment you step into it, you are met by a warmth that is unlike any you have felt elsewhere in the inn. Not the dry, even heat of stoves, but the deep, living warmth that comes from a real fire. The hearth itself is not large, built of heavy, uneven stones that looked as if they were taken from a riverbed, smoothed by water and time. They are darkened here and there by soot, though not overly so, as if the fire within has never burned with the harsh, crackling intensity of a blaze, but has instead kept to a constant, quiet glow. The flames move in slow curls, their light, honey, soft and steady, casting gentle shadows along the curved ceiling. It is not the kind of fire you feed and tend in the usual way. It seems to burn from some inner source, a patient flame that neither grows nor fades. The air around it holds a scent that is both smoky and sweet, with a note of something you cannot name, a fragrance that makes you think of warm bread in winter and the resin of pine on summer evenings, though you are sure neither is the true cause. Against the far wall, a wooden bench sits low, its cushions worn to a velvety thinness by the shape of those who have sat there before you. You take a seat, and the warmth seeps into your bones almost immediately, as though the bench itself has been holding the fire's heat for years. You notice the air here is different from the rest of the inn. It moves slowly, without drafts or chill, and it seems to carry with it a quiet hum, a faint vibration just on the edge of hearing, as if the fire has its own steady heartbeat. Above the mantel there is no clock, no painting, only a single strip of polished wood into which someone, long ago, carved a row of small notches. They are neat and deliberate, each the same size, each spaced evenly apart. You cannot say whether they are meant to count days, years, or something else entirely, but the wood around them is smooth from touch, as if visitors have rested their fingers there countless times before you. You lean back and let the light wash over you, and you realize something strange. The fire gives warmth, yet it does not seem to consume the logs within it. They are the same rounded shapes you saw when you first entered, their bark unburned, their surfaces only faintly darkened in places. You watch for a long time, expecting them to crumble or change, but they remain whole, their edges glowing faintly where the light touches them. The flames themselves are quiet, moving not with the restless hunger of most fires, but with the calm rhythm of breathing in sleep. It feels like a place meant for waiting, though you cannot say for what. You imagine that guests must have sat here long before you, some perhaps only pausing for a moment to warm their hands, others lingering for hours in the fire's patient glow. You can almost see them if you close your eyes. A traveler with wet boots steaming by the hearth, a woman with a shawl drawn close as she listens to the wind outside, a child holding a cup of something warm, watching the flames as though they might tell a story if only he looked long enough. You lose track of time in the room, though you are not sure time moves here in the same way as it does elsewhere. The fire never grows brighter, never dims, and you suspect it has been this way for longer than anyone could remember, perhaps even before the inn itself was built. There is a sense, not of age exactly, but of constancy, as if this hearth belongs to something older and quieter than the walls that hold it. When at last you rise, the warmth follows you, lingering in your skin, in your fingertips, even in your breath. You pause before stepping out, glancing back at the steady light, and you have the odd feeling that the fire knows you have been there, not in the way of noticing, but in the way of remembering. You wonder if, should you return tomorrow or years from now, it would greet you with the same unchanging flame, holding your place as though you had only just stepped away. Outside in the hall, the air feels cooler, the silence deeper, and the shadows longer. Yet somewhere behind you, in that little room, the hearth still burns, waiting in its slow, unwavering way for the next set of hands to reach toward its warmth, for the next guest who will stay longer than they mean to, and perhaps, like so many before, never truly leave again. You find the mirror by wandering down a corridor whose walls seem to lean inward just slightly, narrowing the space and softening the sounds of your steps until they are more like whispers than footfalls. The glass is tall and framed in oak that is darkened with age, the corners carved into simple, curling shapes that speak of a hand that took its time, shaping each curve with care. You notice it first, not for its reflection, but for the warmth it seems to radiate, faint and comforting, like sunlight gathered on a cool afternoon. When you step closer, the air changes, subtly, carrying with it a scent that is faintly floral, almost like the first blooms of spring, though the hall around you smells of wood polish and the lingering traces of the inn's ever-present candlelight. When you finally look into the mirror, the reflection surprises you. It is not the corridor behind you, nor the hall as it is now, quiet and dimly lit, that meets your eyes. Instead, the world in the glass has shifted in ways that are difficult to name. Outside its boundaries, you see a meadow, vast and soft, under the gentle gold of a late autumn sun. The grass is warm in tone, swept in gentle waves by a wind you cannot feel, and scattered leaves drift lazily through the air, red and copper against the muted green. The sky is low and wide, a wash of soft gray and pink clouds that promises evening but has not yet delivered night. You feel the warmth in your chest as you gaze, the kind of warmth that comes from seeing a familiar place anew. And yet you know it is not here, not now, not anywhere within the inn. The longer you watch, the more details assert themselves. A small stream winds lazily through the meadow, its water catching the fading light in small, glimmering flashes. And at its edge, a tree with bare branches stands solitary, its silhouette mirrored in the glass, yet absent from any window in the inn. A deer steps lightly from shadow into sunlight, pausing just long enough to drink from the water. And for a heartbeat, you swear it looks directly at you, its eyes deep and patient, full of questions you cannot answer. The reflection is unshakable in its stillness, yet there is movement everywhere within it, quiet and continuous, like a living painting that remembers more than it reveals. You reach out, and the glass is cool under your fingertips, smooth and unyielding, betraying nothing of the world it contains. You imagine that if you pressed harder, you might break the barrier and step into that autumn field, leaving the inn behind entirely, but you do not. The warmth and scent of the hall cling to you, a gentle tether that keeps you in this space, even as your mind drifts toward the endless softness beyond the glass. There is a subtle hum, faint but persistent, that seems to come from the mirror itself, a vibration felt more than heard, and it resonates with your own pulse, slow and calm, measured, like the heart of someone who has slept deeply and will wake refreshed. There is a chair beside the mirror, low and wooden, its surface worn smooth by decades of use. You sit and allow yourself to observe, letting your eyes trace every curve of the frame, every ripple of light across the glass, every shadow the reflected sun casts upon the meadow. Time stretches in this way, unmeasured and soft, as if the mirror has taken a portion of eternity and offered it here for anyone who chooses to watch. You realize that no matter how long you remain, the scene never shifts seasons, never yields to winter's frost or summer's blaze. It is autumn, endlessly, suspended in the gentle hush of a day fading toward twilight, yet always holding the warmth of a sun that will never set. Your reflection is there too, but it is not quite you. The features are the same, and yet the light touches them differently, softening your lines and adding a quiet ease to your expression. You notice small details, the glint of an earring, the slight curl of your hair, that appear enhanced yet unattached from reality. It is as if the mirror has taken your form and offered it the gift of calm, of rest, of a moment stretched into forever. You imagine, with a soft thrill of wonder, that anyone who gazes long enough might find themselves walking through the meadow, feeling the warmth of autumn sun on their skin, hearing only the whisper of leaves in the wind, and forgetting the cold of the winter night outside the inn. When at last you stand, the mirror continues to hold its quiet autumn, unchanged by your movement or the shifting light of the corridor. You step away slowly, touching the frame one last time and inhaling the subtle scent of flowers that clings to the wood. You feel the warmth of the hall and the coolness of the glass lingering together in your skin, an echo of two worlds pressed briefly into one. As you continue down the hallway, the mirror seems to follow you in memory more than sight. You know that should you return, it will remain as it is, showing the same season, the same meadow, the same quiet, patient light. And even though you walk on, leaving it behind for now, a part of you carries the endless autumn with you, the scent of grass and leaves, the gentle hum of life unseen, and the soft, unbroken peace that seems to exist just beyond the reach of the inn itself. It is deep in the heart of the inn that you first hear it, a soft, distant chime that seems to come from nowhere, as though the building itself were breathing and the sound were part of its exhalation. The tone is delicate and lingering, neither loud nor jarring, but it carries through the corridors with a quiet insistence, drawing your footsteps toward it without urgency. You walk slowly, allowing your senses to drink in the warmth of the hall, the polished wooden floors under your soles, the faint scent of candle wax and old timber, all heightened by the soft echo of the bell. The source is not immediately clear. You pass doorways and halls, each empty and dimly lit, and yet the sound persists, weaving around corners and through walls, settling briefly in the silence before moving again, as if traveling at its own gentle will. You reach a staircase and climb carefully, your hand gliding along the smooth railing that has been warmed over years by countless others. Each step feels cushioned by the memory of those who passed this way before, and the bell continues its soft, measured ringing, steady yet impossible to locate. At last, you find yourself in a small chamber above the common room, a space you have never noticed before, though its existence seems inevitable, as if it were always there in the shadow of the inn's heartbeat. In the center hangs a small bell, bronze and darkened with age, suspended from a simple iron bracket affixed to the ceiling. You approach it, expecting to see a rope or a handle, some way of coaxing the sound, and yet there is nothing. No mechanism, no cord, no hand to pull, and yet the bell rings softly, persistently, as if touched by an invisible hand that knows the rhythm of this house. The air here is cooler than in the hall below, but not cold. It carries the faint metallic scent of the bell and the softer, sweeter aroma of wax and dust, mingling into a fragrance both unusual and familiar. The light is dim, spilling in through a small window high in the wall, scattering in pale amber and illuminating motes of dust that drift lazily in the gentle currents. You reach out, almost involuntarily, to touch the bell, but your fingers pass through the air beneath it without resistance. The sound continues, and in its persistence you feel a strange reassurance, as if the bell is marking time in a place where time itself has slowed and lost its usual urgency. You sit on the wooden floor beneath it, leaning back against the wall, letting the resonance wash over you. Each chime carries a subtle warmth, a vibration that seeps into your bones and settles in your chest, calming thoughts that might otherwise wander. You imagine the many guests who have paused here before you, whether briefly or for longer than they intended, each listening to the bell in its quiet, ceaseless song. Perhaps some have drifted into sleep beneath its tone, the chime guiding them gently toward dreams, while others simply sat and waited, letting the sound remind them that the inn has a life of its own, independent of the people who move through it. Outside the window, the night stretches wide and deep. You can hear the faint rustle of leaves in the courtyard, the distant call of an owl, and the soft whisper of wind through the timbers. Inside, the bell's song persists, a steady thread connecting you to some hidden rhythm of the house. You feel the air vibrate subtly with it, and you realize that it is not so much a warning or a call, but a presence, a gentle acknowledgement that the inn itself is aware, keeping count of moments, of arrivals, of those who stay and those who disappear into its quiet, enduring embrace. You rise at last, leaving the room reluctantly, and the bell continues its song behind you, neither fading nor changing. You descend the staircase slowly, noting how the sound drifts with you, following your steps through hallways and around corners, yet always just out of reach. The warmth of the inn seems to deepen, as if the bell has settled some unseen balance, and you find yourself breathing more evenly, your thoughts slower, your mind quieter. As you return to the familiar halls of the inn, you understand something about this bell that you cannot fully articulate. It is not bound by human hands or actions, yet it responds to them. It does not require you to listen, and yet listening becomes inevitable. It rings for all who are here, for all who have passed through, and for all who have been welcomed, and then vanished quietly into its rooms. You carry the memory of its sound with you, a soft vibration beneath your ribs, and it settles into your mind like a lullaby, gentle, steady, and impossible to resist. Later, when you are elsewhere in the inn, perhaps lying in a bed that is not your own, you think you hear the faintest echo of the bell. A reminder that some things in this place endure beyond the moment, beyond the individual, holding steady in the quiet spaces where ordinary time does not intrude. And even as sleep begins to claim you, the soft ringing continues, patient and gentle, guiding you into dreams where the inn stretches out endlessly, and its mysteries hum quietly, waiting for the next guest who will never be seen again. You notice the corridor as if it has only just appeared, though you are certain you have walked this wing of the inn many times before. Its entrance is narrow, flanked by dark wooden panels that catch the faint glow of the hallway lamps in a muted amber sheen. There is nothing remarkable about the doorways that line it, and yet, as you step inside, the air changes immediately, cooler now, but not cold, as though the walls themselves have absorbed decades of stories whispered by those who passed through. The ceiling arches low, and the shadows along its curves seem to bend toward you in a soft, expectant way, inviting you to walk further, though there is no urgency in their pull. Its floorboards warm beneath your feet from some unseen hearth nearby. You notice how the light falls differently here, softer and uneven, touching the walls in pools rather than a steady glow, and with it comes a quiet sensation that time is moving more slowly, acknowledging your presence in the hush of its ancient, patient rhythm. The further you go, the more you realize that the doors along this hall do not open to rooms, or at least not in the way the inn's other chambers do. Their surfaces are smooth, unyielding, and the brass handles are cool and slightly damp, as though the corridor itself has been breathing upon them for years. A faint draft rises from beneath the last door on the left, carrying with it a scent you cannot name fully. It is earthy and green, with the faintest note of something floral, like the memory of a garden you once visited in another life. The light from your lantern flutters, and you catch the glint of a polished keyhole, though there is no key nearby, no indication that the door was ever meant to be unlocked. You press your palm to it, and the wood is smooth under your fingers, vibrating faintly as if alive. You withdraw, and yet the sensation lingers, leaving a quiet, vibrating warmth in your chest that settles with the soft rhythm of your heartbeat. As you continue down the corridor, the walls themselves seem to breathe subtly, expanding and contracting in ways you cannot fully discern. You notice small details, a shadow flickering across the floor, though there is no movement above, the faintest whisper of silk against wood, though no one is present, the almost imperceptible sound of water running somewhere far below the floorboards. The hall stretches endlessly, though you know it must have an end. Your feet, however, carry you forward in the quiet, as if drawn by some slow, deliberate current beneath the surface of the air itself. Halfway along, a window appears, set low in the wall, yet it opens to nothing you recognize. Beyond the glass is a silver-gray haze, mottled and shifting like fog on a still morning. You lean closer, resting your cheek against the cool pane, and for a moment it seems that if you step forward, you might walk into the gray, leaving the corridor and perhaps the inn itself behind. The sensation is thrilling yet gentle, like the pause between inhaling and exhaling, and you linger, letting your eyes drink in the soft, undulating light. The reflection of your own face stares back at you, calm and attentive, and you imagine it might be smiling ever so slightly in recognition of the strange, quiet world you have stumbled into. It is worn smooth in the center, and you feel compelled to sit, The wood is warm, faintly scented of cedar, and the air around it carries that same subtle vibration you noticed on the door. You close your eyes, letting the corridor hum its gentle, wordless song. In this moment, the world beyond these walls falls away. The sound of the inn's other halls, the faint voices in the kitchen, even the wind outside. Eventually, you rise and continue your slow walk, feeling the hall curve in ways that are familiar yet impossible to map. Doors remain closed, windows offer only shifting gray, and the light maintains its gentle, uneven glow. There is a sense here that the corridor itself is alive, aware of your presence, and content to guide you without expectation. When at last the corridor seems to fade into the familiar wood and stone of the inn's main hall, you pause at the threshold, taking in the change of air, the faint return of candle scent and warmth. You glance back once, half expecting to see the narrow hallway stretching endlessly behind you. And for a fleeting second you do, a shimmer of shadow and light, inviting, patient, unknowable, waiting for the next traveler who might lose themselves within its gentle, endless embrace. You climb the narrow staircase to the attic slowly, your fingers brushing against the worn railing, the wood smooth and familiar under your touch from countless other steps taken here before. The air grows cooler as you ascend, carrying a faint mustiness, a mixture of aged timber, dried herbs, and the quiet sweetness of dust that has settled over decades. Each step creaks softly beneath your weight, but not in complaint, more as a gentle greeting, a reminder that this space, high above the inn, has long awaited visitors who would pause, listen, and breathe in its quiet stories. When you reach the top, the low slant of the roof seems to embrace you, folding the space inward like a secret kept close. The attic is dimly lit by a small window near the peak, the glass clouded by years of frost and weather, diffusing the moonlight into a silvery haze that falls across the room in broad, soft strokes. Dust motes float lazily through the beams, catching the glow, each one appearing as a tiny, suspended star in a sky that has forgotten the sun. You step carefully among the trunks and bundles of cloth that are stacked neatly along the walls, their textures varied: rough canvas, smooth leather, the softness of linen worn thin by time. Each one seems to carry a story, though they remain silent, holding within them whispers of hands that packed and unpacked, of fingers brushing against the fabric, and the small sighs of those who lingered too long. At the center of the attic stands a single chair, simple and sturdy, its wood polished to a soft gleam by years of being moved, touched, and leaned upon. You sit and feel the faint warmth of the seat, as though the echoes of those who rested here before you have left a lingering trace. The air is still, but alive with the quiet murmurs of memory. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear them: soft voices, too gentle to discern fully, the rustle of papers, the faint creak of a door opening long ago. It is not a sound to startle or frighten. Rather, it is an invitation to remember, to imagine, to drift slowly into the lives that pass through this space without leaving themselves fully behind. You move closer to the window and press your palm against the cool glass. Outside, the night spreads wide, the roofs of the inn catching pale moonlight, and beyond them, the landscape stretches into soft, rolling shadows, unbroken and quiet. Inside, the attic breathes with a slower rhythm than the floors below, and you feel it in your chest, a calm pulse that matches your own heartbeat. There is a faint scent of lavender in the air, though you know no flowers grow here. It is the fragrance of memory itself, sweet and subtle, winding around your senses and settling gently like a lullaby played for one person only. As you wander among the trunks, you notice small scraps of paper and old letters, edges yellowed and curling. You lift one, careful not to disturb the others, and the ink is faded but legible, looping words that speak of distant journeys, small acts of kindness, moments of longing. You imagine the hands that held the pen, the breath caught as thoughts were shaped into letters that would be tucked away here, to be forgotten and remembered all at once. Each note is a fragment of someone's life, a whisper preserved in the quiet folds of the attic, waiting for a visitor to pause and breathe it into their own awareness. There is a trunk at the far end, larger than the others, bound with brass and deep brown leather, the surface worn smooth in places from years of handling. You lift the lid, and a faint rush of air escapes, carrying a mixture of cedar, dust, and the faintest hint of smoke perhaps, from a candle that long ago burned near this very spot. Inside are fabrics, neatly folded, smelling faintly of lavender and aged paper. But interspersed among them are small objects, a carved wooden toy, a glass bottle with something suspended in it, a single button from a coat worn many years ago. You lift each item carefully, tracing its texture with your fingers, feeling the history embedded in it, the quiet patience of things kept safe, unseen yet present. You sit back on the floor, allowing the soft glow from the window to wash over you and the small treasures scattered before you. Time feels suspended here, as though the attic itself has slowed the hours, folding them into a gentle, continuous moment that exists solely for observation and reflection. You imagine those who once lingered here, perhaps children, seeking a quiet corner, travelers resting in secret from the world below, or weary souls who came to the inn and never truly left. The whispers of memory brush against your skin, a soft reassurance that this place holds you in the same patient way it has held so many others. Eventually, you rise, leaving the treasures carefully in place. The trunk closed and the papers returned to their quiet stacks. You turn to the window once more, letting the silver light fill your vision, and for a long, slow moment, you imagine the attic breathing with you, a living space that exists just out of time, where echoes of lives are preserved and the quiet of the night is a constant, gentle companion. When you finally descend, the air of the hall feels warmer, more immediate. Yet the memory of the attic lingers, carried in the soft weight of quiet and the faint hum of forgotten whispers that trail just behind you like a shadow you might never leave.
You find the entrance to the garden almost by accident, as if it has waited patiently for you to notice it. Tucked behind a low wooden gate that blends seamlessly with the inn's shadowed walls, the gate is cool beneath your fingertips, smooth and worn from countless hands before yours, and when you lift it, a soft creak escapes into the night, a sound almost like a sigh. The garden itself is unlike any you have known. It thrives not in sunlight, but in the gentle illumination of the inn's lanterns, the glow spilling across the plants in a quiet, silvered luminescence. The air here carries a strange, comforting warmth, tempered by the faint chill of evening, and it is rich with the scent of soil, moss, and flowers that bloom without day, their colors hidden yet suggested in the softness of their fragrance. You step onto the gravel path, each stone cool beneath your feet, and the garden seems to respond to your presence. A subtle movement in the leaves, a small quiver of blossoms that might be imagined, or perhaps are real. There is no wind, yet the air feels alive, stirring around you in a delicate rhythm, as if it were breathing through the roots and stems of every plant. Along the path, ferns unfurl slowly in their quiet way, and the flowers, though impossible to name, give off a soft, soothing glow that illuminates the surrounding darkness without harshness, creating shadows that seem to dance lazily on the ground, long and fluid like gentle water. At the center of the garden is a fountain, small and simple, yet perfectly formed, with water that trickles continuously. Its sound a quiet murmur that fills the space with calm. You kneel beside it and cup your hands to drink, though the water tastes more of memory than anything tangible, sweet, and clear. Like the recollection of a childhood you may not have lived, a dream recalled upon waking. The stones surrounding the fountain are warm from the invisible light above, and you rest your hands upon them, feeling the texture of their worn surfaces, each groove a history of touch, each cool edge a reminder of the quiet patience with which the garden has been nurtured. As you wander further, you notice small, delicate paths branching off from the main trail, each leading to pockets of shadowed tranquility. Here, flowers cluster in dense groups, their scents mingling in complex layers. The sharp sweetness of jasmine, the gentle spice of lavender, the earthiness of moss and damp bark. You brush your fingertips lightly over the petals, marveling at the soft resistance of their forms. The way they yield slightly under your touch yet remain resilient, as though aware of the care that passes through this place. The air is thick with quiet energy, subtle and alive, pressing gently against your skin, warming your cheeks and fingertips in the absence of sun. In one corner, you find a bench carved from a single piece of dark wood, polished smooth and shaded beneath a canopy of shadowy leaves. You sit, letting the weight of the bench anchor you to the garden's rhythm. The silence here is profound but not empty. It is filled with the soft rustle of leaves, the trickle of water, the faint exhalation of night itself, moving slowly through the branches, over the gravel, across the flowers. You close your eyes, and for a long while, you simply breathe, feeling the garden's slow heartbeat merge with your own. Each inhalation and exhalation, a quiet conversation between yourself and the living darkness. The further you walk, the more the garden reveals itself, in subtle ways that require patience to notice. A cluster of glowing buds that open and close in delicate syncopation. The faint shimmer of dew along the edges of unseen leaves. The sudden, soft brush of an insect's wings against your hand before it vanishes into the shadows. It is a world suspended, existing simultaneously within and apart from the inn, a place of quiet growth where day and night have no meaning in time, drifts softly like petals carried along a slow stream. You feel that those who vanished within the inn might have found themselves here, walking paths unseen by others, pausing to drink from the fountain, to sit on the benches, to let the garden hold them in its calm embrace, while the world outside continued on, unaware. Eventually, you approach the far edge of the garden, where a low wall covered in climbing vines meets the night. You press your hand against the stone, feeling the rough surface beneath your palm and the soft vibration of life within it. Beyond this wall, you imagine the landscape stretching out into darkness, unknown yet unthreatening, a gentle extension of the garden's quiet, protective world. You take a deep breath, savoring the mingling scents of earth, flowers, and night, feeling the lingering warmth of the stones beneath your feet and the soft pool of the air around you. When you finally step back toward the inn, the garden seems to follow you in memory. Its gentle illumination, its soft scents, the slow rhythm of its life imprinted upon your senses. You pass through the gate, hearing its quiet sigh, and the world of the inn embraces you once more, warm and familiar. Yet even as you walk along the familiar corridors, a piece of the garden remains with you. The soft hum of unseen blooms, the trickle of water from a fountain in a place that exists quietly, just beyond sight, and the sense that some spaces are meant not to be fully entered, but quietly remembered, like a lullaby that lingers long after the song has ended.
The inn grows quieter as night deepens, the kind of quiet that feels like a gentle sigh, settling into every corner of the halls and rooms, flowing through the cracks in the wooden floors and the small gaps between the beams above. You move slowly, barefoot now, letting your steps barely whisper across the polished boards. carrying with you the soft memories of the garden, the attic, and the corridor that led nowhere. The warmth of the hearth from the main hall has faded into a gentle, lingering glow, and the scent of candle wax, polished wood, and the faintest trace of herbs mixes into a perfume that is uniquely this place, wrapping around your senses like a familiar blanket. You feel it settle into your chest, a calm rhythm that matches the slow cadence of your own heartbeat. As you walk, you sense that you are not alone, though the inn is empty of ordinary guests. Chairs remain empty, beds untouched, yet there is a presence here that is subtle, patient, and somehow comforting. The air vibrates ever so slightly, carrying the memory of footsteps that have wandered these halls long before you, of whispers too soft to catch fully, of laughter that lingers at the edges of hearing like a forgotten lullaby. You notice the soft pressure of warmth brushing past your arms, as if invisible companions have joined you in the quiet, moving slowly and purposefully through the inn, guided by the same invisible current that has drawn you through the other rooms. In the dining hall, the long table is polished and empty, yet you feel the echo of hands that have rested upon it, of meals shared in quietude and conversation too soft to remember clearly. You walk to the head of the table and run your fingertips along the surface, feeling the faint impressions left by those who once sat here, impressions that have been absorbed into the wood over years, decades perhaps, each one a gentle memory pressing back. The scent of aged oak and lingering herbs fills the air here, a quiet reminder that this place is lived in even when empty, nourished by those who came seeking shelter, comfort, and perhaps a place where time itself could pause just long enough to let them remain. You pass through the hallways once more, noticing the small details that reveal the presence of the night guests. A coat left draped over a chair, folded with care, though no hand is visible. A book opened to a page, its words softly illuminated by the glow of a lantern, the air around it humming with a quiet anticipation, the faint scent of cologne or soap, subtle and lingering, marking a space as lived in without disturbing the calm. You realize that these guests, the ones who are never seen again, are not bound by the ordinary concerns of arrival and departure. They are here in spirit, in memory, in the quiet pulse of the inn itself, and they move through its spaces with a serene, almost reverential patience. In one small chamber, you pause by a bed that has been made with careful precision. The sheets are cool beneath your fingertips, the blankets folded back in a manner that suggests readiness, anticipation of a guest who may never come. Yet, as you inhale, you notice the faintest warmth lingering in the mattress, the soft trace of someone's presence that refuses to be erased. You imagine the night guests drifting silently into these rooms, lying down to rest in the embrace of the inn, their breathing sensing with the soft rhythm of the walls, their forms blending with the shadows and the muted glow of lanterns, becoming part of this living, breathing place that waits for no one and yet welcomes all. You move toward the main stairwell and pause at the window overlooking the courtyard. Moonlight spills across the stones, and the faint wind carries the scent of the garden you visited earlier. Somewhere in the distance, the fountain's quiet murmur reaches your ears, and for a moment you imagine the night guests wandering outside, trailing their fingers along the hedges, pausing to drink from the water, sitting silently on benches in the silver glow, content in a world that has no need for ordinary time. You feel a connection to them, a sense of shared stillness, as though you have been invited to become part of the rhythm that sustains the inn when the doors are closed and the halls are empty of ordinary travelers. As the night deepens further, you return to your room, the bed welcoming and familiar beneath your hands, the sheets cool and fragrant with the faint aroma of lavender and wood polish. You lie down slowly, letting your body sink into the mattress, carrying with you the gentle pulse of the inn, the quiet hum of corridors, attics, gardens, and fountains. The night guests surround you, invisible yet present, their calm patience folding around you like a soft quilt. You feel the history of the inn settling into your bones, a quiet understanding that those who disappear here are never truly gone. They remain in the gentle resonance of the floors, the whisper of the walls, the subtle heartbeat that moves through every lamp, chair, and table, every stone and blossom holding steady in the dark. And as your eyes close, as sleep begins to fold you into its soft embrace, you hear the quietest of murmurs, not words, but a presence, a steady companionship that assures you of belonging. You drift into dreams, carried by the inn's calm, the night guests walking silently beside you, each breath and heartbeat in sync with the gentle pulse of this extraordinary place, where those who arrive and are never seen again exist in a perfect, undisturbed stillness, and the world beyond the walls of the inn is held at bay, leaving only the serene, timeless embrace of the night. The inn waits, patient and enduring, holding its guests in its quiet, infinite memory, and you, too, are part of it now, breathing with its rhythm, walking its halls in gentle harmony, and finally, in the tender hush of darkness, becoming one with the calm, the quiet, and the soft, enduring mystery of a place where no one is truly lost, and yet everyone is forever transformed by its presence.